Hi there, it's Denise Eckert, and I love coming on here and sharing different ideas and techniques to help you lower your stress. And today we're going to talk about stress and motivation. And today I have Marcy Luna joining me, and she's a high performance coach, exercise psychologist, speaker, and founder of Reenergize Coaching. Her clients know her for her engaged, passionate speaking styles that blend science, humor, and practical tools that people can actually use. So welcome, Marcy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Now, what inspired you to do this type of work?
Well, having been a fitness professional for over 30 years, at some stage I started seeing the repetitive patterns of particularly women really beating themselves up and noticing how the inner critic is not leading people to better outcomes. And then I had my own experience in 2010. I was in a marriage that was not working, and I had horrific eczema for years. And my hands were, I couldn't do dishes without pain. I did do dishes, but I couldn't do it without pain. I had little kids at the time, and nothing worked to get rid of it. And I recognized that there was a stress component to it, but I didn't understand it. And when my marriage ended and the dust settled, my eczema completely disappeared, having me do nothing different. So being the exercise physiologist that I am and the interest in how our body works, I really wanted to understand stress physiology because I had this idea that stress is the underpinning of most things that we don't want in our lives, but we don't address the stress. We try to address all the symptoms and all the things. So I really wanted to understand stress physiology as a core needle mover to impact all the things that we're trying to impact.
Well, and I'm dying to know, what did you learn? I've been doing this podcast for quite a few years, and it's bizarre the amount of unknown things that happen to us because we're under so much stress. Like one woman, her spine, it just shattered, and organ failure. There was just no rhyme or reason. Doctor after doctor, there was just no answer. And stress is such a big problem in our lives for our health.
Yes. The thing about stress that makes it such a big problem is that we think that it's not something inside of us. We see it as something outside of us that's just happening to us, and we're just reactive to it. And that's why it's such a problem. And when you understand the science of stress and you recognize that you have a moment to make a different decision, different things can happen. So I started studying stress. The great Robert Sapolsky, who's sort of the godfather of stress physiology, taught me a lot. But I mean, not personally, that would be amazing. But I learned a lot from his teachings and his studies. And one of the things that he really underpins is the difference between chronic stress, that prolonged day in, day out stress. And I term that as like the stress who become that becomes who you are. You wake up every day, you're at a 7 out of 10 on stress, you are underslept, underhydrated, overfed, undernourished, overworked, overwhelmed, and you start your day at a 7, and then you check your email. And so the physiology is the problem, and we make it ourselves that's a problem, or our lives, or our circumstances. And so when we can learn the physiology that we can shift, we can make better choices because we have more capacity to handle our lives. So the difference being acute stress, not so much of a problem. It actually be really helpful. We're not trying to eliminate stress. Like that's impossible. And we wouldn't want it. We wouldn't thrive. Chronic stress is a different story. And that's where we have to start focusing on capacity. How do I create more capacity in my body to handle the stress in my life? When our bodies are under stress over the long term, it's not what our bodies are designed to do under stress. Our bodies are designed to get us to safety. And so we sacrifice the long-term building projects. It's not a time to make a baby. It's not a time to have the hormones for that. It's not a time to remantle bone to heal. It's none of that. When we are under stress, we're just trying to get to the short-term survival. So when we're under stress chronically, our bodies are sacrificing all kinds of nutrients and elements that we need, which is why bones can get brittle and wounds don't heal and illness happens because our bodies are not capable of handling stress like that over the long term.
And how do you create that capacity?
Yes. Well, there are several ways to create the capacity. So, number one, I have this sort of framework. It's NDA, and the first step in the framework is to notice. Because if we don't even notice the stress because it's just another day, then we have no option to change it. So we have to notice it, and that takes something. It's easy to say, it's easy to interpret, but it's harder to do. We have to notice when who's the person that calls you when you're at the office and immediately you feel tense. Who's the client? Who in your life immediately creates that? And then once we identify that moment, we can do something different. So, noticing the stress experience is number one. And really what I want everybody to understand from a physiology perspective, what happens when we have that stress moment is our blood pressure goes up. I think we all know our heart rate can go up. What happens in the brain is the amygdala, the reptilian brain, the keep you safe, fight, flight, freeze. It's actually a part of our brain that's wired to notice important things. That's whether they are fun things or scary things. But it's that amygdala gets really activated. And when that amygdala gets activated, certain things happen out of survival, not out of making you a long term thriving project in biology, right? So we're just trying to get through the moment. But when that moment extends on and on and on, things break down. So the reason they break down is because number one, in the brain, the fear center fires up and that releases a cascade is called the HPA axis. It's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So we release stress hormones, cortisol being one of them, adrenaline. And that makes our prefrontal cortex, the logic, the reasoning, the why you did dumb things as a teenager is because that wasn't fully developed. The good part of your brain that has sense, that actually shuts down under stress because we don't want to deliberate in a threatening situation. Which one is better, right, left? Let me think about that. You don't want to do that. You just want to move to safety. And everything our bodies are doing under that stress are to get us to safety. Because theoretically, there will be a point when you're safe, right? So when we understand that that is the positive performance mechanism of stress, that can make you really perform well at a meeting. That can make you think more clearly and focused and narrow. If you're trying to do a project, it starts breaking down our bodies when it is prolonged, and it becomes prolonged when we don't have any recovery.
Absolutely. And I find too that, I mean, as we were talking before, I'm the burnout queen. And I find when you are stressed, we tend to keep pushing and pushing. It's
Yes.
like it's a horrible cycle to get in until you get sick.
Yes.
And then you have no choice. And then you
Yes.
finally have to go, okay, I need to make a change here. You mentioned that it was MB something, so it was notice. And what was,
Notice and D, decide, and then A is act. So you have to notice what's happening so that you can then make a decision. Am I going to do this the same way as I always do it? Or am I going to give myself permission to feel differently? This is very hard for high achievers. This is hard for those of us that are used to, oh, something's not going right. Let me just push harder. You say you need me to do more. I'm going to prove to you that I can do it all plus some. This is hard because we have created a sense of success. The feeling of success we often associate with the same feelings of stress. We made an A on the test. We got the job. We got the promotion. We did the thing with this feeling of stress. So now we associate the feeling of stress with this is how I achieve. So we have to be willing, giving ourselves permission to try on something better, and I want to offer the science to help you feel more at ease about doing it. Because when you operate from a place of allowing yourself short bouts of stress and then recovering, you're getting more access to your prefrontal cortex. You're getting more access to your full brain. Our memory center, our hippocampus actually shrinks with chronic stress. So our memory gets poorer and we're thinking we're performing better. I kind of liken it to the drunk guy at the wedding who is dancing and thinks he's doing an awesome job. But perspective is really could is he? So I feel like we do that when we're under stress because our brains are the system defending the system, right? So it's tricky and it takes something. And so I want to just really honor that. It does take something to make a different choice. But if we decide to try on something different, then we can choose something different and we don't have to sacrifice our peace, our health, our wellness, our relationships for our success. So notice is first, decide is second, and then act is you got to know what to do.
And all the years I've been doing this podcast and working with women in lowering this stress, I never thought of it that way, that stress gives you that fake excitement and it
Mhm.
gives you that little rush. But meanwhile, it's the stress talking. It's not achieving anything. It's
Right.
not getting the A. It's not getting an award or finishing a project. It's just
Right.
that stress feeling. And that's, yeah, I never even thought of it that way. That's amazing.
Yeah. So if we pause there for a second and you consider, so if everybody was to reflect on that exact thing, like how much have you attached the same feeling of stress to achievement? And here's something important to note. The physiology. So if we just break it down to it's your physiology. It's not a judgment about you as a human being. It's just how can we change what the chemistry in your body. So physiology is how your different systems work at the cellular level. So if we're looking at stress and we look at excitement, it's the same physiology with a different story,
Mhm.
right? So if you're feeling really stressed and anxious about something, you probably have very similar chemicals floating around, but you have a different story about it. And it's the same thing with the amygdala actually marks really important joyful moments. So if you think about the last time you had fun, I hope you can think of a time you've had fun. The only reason you remember that time of having fun is because you were present to having fun. You noticed it. So we're marking those moments when we notice something exciting is happening. And that is definitely what happens with this chronic stress is some of the stories we're telling ourselves and then everything happens in response to that. So as I mentioned, blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, the glucose goes up. So your body is releasing energy so you can fight or flee. Your body is just trying to survive. And I want to preface this with there's a continuum, right? If somebody comes into your house to rob you, you're going to have a different level of adrenaline, I hope, than you have when you're going to work on a regular day that you feel stressed, right? So it's this continuum of stress, but these things happen and people wonder why their pants don't fit anymore. And there's a direct correlation between elevated chronic levels of cortisol and belly fat. And it's partly because we release energy, but then we don't use it. We're just, especially sitting in the car when you get really stressed out, such an easy place to get stressed out. And the greatest training ground to practice something different, because the only person you impact is you and maybe the other people in your car. But if you can practice feeling more relaxed, then you have a different physiology. So I have some tools to put into practice, and they're short tools. They're not, we have ways to practice things over the long term, like exercising, which helps with stress regulation. And exercise is a stressor, so I just want to point that out, but it gives us more capacity. But then there are tools that you can do in the moment. The phone rings. What could you do to calm your nervous system, access the best parts of you, and then answer the phone?
Breathe.
That's the action. Yeah. Yes. Breathing is a great one. We don't know it, but breath definitely gets shallow when we're stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talk about practices for someone listening right now who is on the edge and is feeling stressed, what are some of the simple practices that you do recommend? We've come across breathing.
Yes, and I really relate to breathing being the one nobody wants to hear about because it's boring and we breathe anyway, right? So it's okay, I already know that. Give me something I don't know that I'm actually going to use. So I want to offer with breathing the inhale for a count of however many, and then exhale for longer. That's the only breath. So just taking that one breath does work to calm down your system a little bit. It might not get you where you want to be, but one of the problems with chronic stress is we deplete our motivation neurochemicals, such as dopamine, which is the mother of motivation because it makes us want something. So when we're reaching burnout, we've really depleted that. So everything feels overwhelming. And it takes real determination to do something different. So, one of the things I love to cue people to do as often as they can during the day, and this isn't going to be one necessarily depending where you are working when the phone rings, but if you go to a window or better yet outside and you look up, when you look at a vast view like the sky, your brain immediately releases dopamine. It is one of the ways that your body is cued that the closed, narrow focus that we have from stress, we're immediately cueing ourselves out of that because we're looking at something expansive. So when we're stressed, the reason we ruminate, we don't see options, we are not good creative problem solvers is because it narrows everything. We don't want to be creative problem solvers when we are in a moment of immediate survival. So when we understand that this is just our brain, the way the brain is working, it's not a character flaw or a character a benefit to you to be constantly in a state of stress. So a lot of this work is really around identity, but the one about looking up, I think, is just helpful because that just feels good, doesn't it?
It
To
does.
go look up at the sky.
It does. It is just a different feeling. I'm sitting here going, I can't even explain how it feels because it's
Yes.
just, ah, that's how it
Yes.
feels.
There you go. And look at
Ah.
that. You did the breath. Ah, right? So there's
Exactly.
just this easy access point, but we have to give ourselves permission to do that thing. It doesn't have to be hard or easy, it's just permission to do it. And I think that's scary for a lot of us who are high achieving or used to just working harder. Who would I be without this feeling of stress? And can I still succeed? Because we look at this as this black and white. Am I leaning back and not caring and I'm lazy or I'm just complacent or am I pushing hard? And it's finding that middle ground. So we've got to be gentle with ourselves and give ourselves grace, right?
And I love what you said. And I just want to back up a little bit. So when we are, as a higher achiever, we push, 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 push. And what I've heard in the past is that if I take that ah moment out or that breathing moment out, I can't get back into my groove. What is the science behind that? I know it's complete crap because for myself, you regroup, you realign,
Yeah.
and you just,
Yes.
but no, you're not going to get back into the rush, rush, rush and chaos. But what is the science of that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, agreed, you can get back to it, but my immediate thought is you're exhausted. You're
Yeah.
exhausted. You're giving yourself a moment to breathe. We don't want to go back to that. We don't want to be in this constantly stressed out state. And so when those are our only two options, it feels really hard because we want to be productive, but we also don't want to feel burned out. So where do you find the middle ground? And I would say that it takes daily consistent practice of just allowing yourself that space and then taking a deep breath and focusing on the next thing. I actually have a tool to share with you because one of the things that really gets impacted with chronic stress, any kind of stress, but chronic stress, it's happening over long term, it's our personal relationships. One of the pieces of one of the things that happen in the brain is that our connection centers, our reading social cues, our ability to see other people and have compassion, that goes away when we're under stress. Because stress is about getting me through time and space to safety. So that is not about, let me think about everybody else. Let me look at you. Let me consider what you're feeling. A stressed brain is not able to connect. So then we get frustrated because maybe we come home at the end of the day and we're just irritable with everybody. or everything they do is a problem, or it's hard to connect. And it feels like an impossible, it's just like nothing is working well. So we don't get our cup filled up with positive connection. And I have the most awesome tool for this one. And you could use this for any transition. And I would offer it, what triggered it is your question, because I would offer it even in transitioning activities. So I'm going from doing this thing, I've stopped, I've taken a break, I've had a cup of tea, I looked up at the sky, and now I have to get back to it. How do I transition? So if you close your eyes, and one of my mentors, Brendan Burchard, came up with this sort of reset called, he calls it the release meditation. You close your eyes, you take a deep breath, and on the exhale, you think the word release. So you just keep breathing and thinking the word release. So you're allowing your brain space to let go of where you just were. That could be doing one task on the computer, and now you've got to go run a meeting. And so you've got to shift. And instead of taking your computer brain with you, we want to change the brain. So what I add to this is the connection piece. This is particularly powerful if you're going to go be in a room of people. In that situation, you're going to a meeting, or if you're coming home at the end of the day, you do that same release mantra. You could do this for 1 minute. And while you're saying to yourself the word release and you're letting go, start picturing the people you're going to be with, and start picturing how much you appreciate them, and start picturing what you love about them. And it could be people you don't even know, just your love of humanity. So you are cueing your body to bring up positive chemicals, and you're wiring up your connection centers in your brain. Then you walk into the room, you walk into the meeting, you walk into the kitchen, and you're a different person. You are able to connect, and people feel that. So it changes the way we transition from just thinking that we have to rush around everywhere.
That's amazing because, yeah, we don't transition. We go from one thing to another. Well, we have thoughts on this and thoughts on that. And no wonder there's times where it's just too much for us. And I just love that, like release and then sort of pre-imagining where you're going to. And it
Hmm.
just, yeah, that's an amazing transition. I love that.
Yeah, the key is the positive projection,
Yeah.
even whatever your story is about people. If you can just think of positive things, you're going to bring up, you're going to get that prefrontal cortex back online, your connection centers back online, and you're going to just be better at everything you do. This is more access to your best self, your best brain, not the adrenaline rushing person.
Now I understand you have a freebie to give out to the audience today, Mindset
Yes.
Moments. Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes, I did this 10-day series for people. It's less than 10 minutes. They're just videos that is like me in your pocket for a few days to start thinking differently about things. How could we shift the brain into a more positive approach, right? A more positive perspective. And what are the things that we often get stuck on? How do we think that we could shift a little bit to just give ourselves a little more space? It's not the end of the story, it's the beginning of the story. But I think it helps to just have some short prompts to think about things in a more positive way.
Awesome. And yes, wherever you're going to be watching or listening to this, I will be putting Marcy's information. Feel free to reach out and ask her any questions. Now, Marcy, what are your final words of wisdom today to the audience?
My final words of wisdom are to stop treating your stress as like the inner critic firing up, being more critical of yourself, being harder on yourself. Treat it like a physiology challenge to work on so you can create more capacity in your body to handle the stress in your life and be kinder to yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the information today. That was amazing. And it's going to leave you a gentle reminder to slow down and enjoy life. And I'll see you in the next episode.